Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's guest is Etienne Peirsman, speaking on CranioSacral for pregnancy and the birth process. Etienne Peirsman is one of the most respected craniosacral therapy teachers worldwide and has been teaching for nearly 30 years. He is the founder and director of PCSA, Peirsman CranioSacral Academy, in the Netherlands, and originated the CranioSacral Professional Organization in Holland. He's also an honorary member of the Dutch Craniosacral Practitioner Association. Additionally, he taught craniosacral at the New Mexico Academy of Healing Arts and the Bastyr University for nearly a decade. He now teaches at his new school, Peirsman CranioSacral Academy, in Tijeras, New Mexico. Etienne is also the author of the wonderful book, Craniosacral Therapy for Babies and Small Children. As a meditator for over 40 years, Etienne Peirsman developed a unique teaching style over the past 3 decades that adds an extraordinarily compassionate and meditative depth to the methods used by the Upledger Institute and combines a practical, no-nonsense approach with the biodynamic style. His specialty is the expression of the heart, the long tide, and their connection to meditation and enlightenment. He has said, drop the word therapy. It is not part of who and what we are. Face it, you are perfect and your heart is perfect. For more information, check out his website at peirsmancraniosacral.com. Hi, Etienne. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
Yes, I'm talking to you from the total opposite side of the country in a totally quiet. I'm looking out of my window and I only see plants, nothing else, just desert plants. Yeah. All right. What shall we talk about?
Yeah, so I'm so grateful to have somebody on with so many decades of wisdom in really supporting the healing process of the body naturally, holistically. And we're going to focus today on pregnant mamas and the birth process, as well as babies and how they can benefit from craniosacral work.
All right. Where shall I start?
Well, let's start from the beginning. So tell us your story, who you are, and how you've become, an international expert on this subject.
Well, yeah, that's a little bit by accident. I started teaching craniosacral 30 years ago in 1990, and I'm not related to any school. Some people say they are biodynamic craniosacral therapists. Others say they are Upledger trained craniosacral therapists. I never took any biodynamic classes. I took some of the advanced classes of the Upledger Institute with John Upledger, especially his immune and brain related stuff, but none of his cranial classes. I got trained in India in a time where people were not really sure about what craniosacral was all about. And so that gave me the freedom not to be forced to work in a very slow or a very fast rhythm. I got the chance to figure out my own way of doing cranio, and it happened to be, I was a meditator for quite a long time, so I happened to start immediately to work in the long tide, which is the craniosacral rhythm of no mind, where everything you need to know is handed to you out of your intuition. And well, it took me quite a while to really cement that way of working. Um, and I've been teaching, quite a long time now. Now, relating to babies, there was, I initially didn't really feel that would be a public I wanted to work with, since I'm a man and not having the experience of having a baby that's growing in my own body, and also not having had the experience of birthing. Yeah, babies were, I always found, a little bit out of my league. That is something for women. I always found, and I still find that. I can work with them, no problem. I can fall in love with them, no problem. But the real experienced people, the people that can really speak out of what it was to have a baby inside, are women, of course. But, it took a woman to change my mind, as they usually do. And my wife was so good with babies, so amazing with babies. And of course, my cranial skills were right present. So she taught me, literally taught me, everything I needed to know to get over my shyness to work with babies. That was basically what it was, the shyness of having uh, an yeah, I almost would say an alien in your hands, something that doesn't speak your language, something that looks so small and fragile, so needy. It took a woman to really bring me over the shyness, so that my intuition with how to deal with these little ones could be developed. And then, as I told you, we brought out a book that must have been 2006, that, or a little earlier, that it was published. And it is now, yeah, it's being sold and translated in Mandarin, in what's that other language, in Cantonese, in Brasilia, in Portuguese, in Spanish, in every language. It's a little bit all over the world. And we brought out that book not only to show the easy techniques, because the techniques that we use on babies are basically not techniques at all. They're just holds where the baby's body is invited to expand by itself. Uh, but the book is not just about techniques, but basically, it shows every aspect that the baby can go through, that we as therapists can help tremendously. Tremendously. It goes from cesarean, yeah, from cesarean to the reverse birth, where they come out with their head last. Every aspect of treating a baby is part of that. And we brought the book out. We published it for the pictures. There is not much out there about craniosacral and babies. I know a few European osteopathic works, but besides that, there is nothing there. So the pictures are so emotionally charged. That's what we basically wanted to do, is to have women look at that book and start crying. That's it. Babies are so small, and the way that they're being treated, the love that you see that's going on between a therapist and a baby, that's something that you can't hold back your tears. So go get the book soon, Laura.
Give me the title again. It's craniosacral therapy for babies and small children.
Yes, and of course it's by Etienne and Nito. Nito was my wife's name. Etienne and Nito Peirsman. Yeah. It's a very small thing. It's not like a book that's 500 pages. I think it has something like 100, 120 pages. Um, you can find it on Amazon like everything else, except babies. You can't find
I
it.
can't wait to check it out.
All right, could do that.
Because pictures speak a thousand words, right? And to your point, babies, there's so many different cranial presentations that occur after birth, from in utero positioning and birth strain, and even, after birth that impacts the alignment of the skull and how the cerebral pump is working, and essentially how the nervous system is developing. And this is so crucial the first 2 years of that child's life. So I just love that, if moms have babies that are irritable, they're tense, they're unsettled, they're not sleeping, pooping, or eating well, which is all babies have to do, then, this type of work can be so powerful to take that stress off their nervous system so that they can, heal.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I would go a little further than what you just said. A lot of the problems, and I mean, almost all problems, and this is something that, I started working with babies at least 20 years ago. Um, the experience that I have and listening to moms in their birthing experience and what happened to them when they have a baby, and this is one of the most amazing things. And everybody who has a baby feels inadequate. Nobody knows what to do. The only way, and this is also how our nervous system learns, is to experience it. And then the second time you experience it, it goes a little easier because you went through it. And the third time, yeah, it's a piece of cake. But the first baby is always going to be a problem. And one of the main reasons here is that all these grandmas and aunts that used to know and guide women in family related circumstances, how to have a baby, how to deal with the baby, how to hold the baby, all that stuff has now disappeared, and this is, yeah, no news. It's been 50, 60, 70 years that the old people that had experience with that are replaced by specialists who live in hospitals. And all right, so here we go into, I wouldn't call it crime against humanity, but it is one of the misfortunes that when you have a baby, that you have to go to a hospital to get delivery. And this is so, yeah, that's common at this point. And in hospitals, the woman just loses her identity, and even her name is changed into a number. And of course, the nurses will call you by your name, but just the idea behind it, the structure behind it. And here we come into so many problems that babies, and it's only getting worse, that babies are dealing with and moms are dealing with nowadays, is the lack of insight of those professionals. And this is not just a side idea. No, no, this is based on how a brain of a baby and a brain of a mom work. When a baby is born, yeah, there is a totality that is being created. There is a baby created, there is an umbilical cord created, and there is a placenta created. All of that is baby. It is not that the umbilical cord and the placenta don't belong to the baby. They're one. The baby, one fertilized egg, creates placenta, umbilical cord, and baby. So, where does that idea come from that we absolutely have to interfere here? Nobody told the baby how it had to create its own body. So, there is this perfect body that is created in a woman. And as soon as it comes out, we take a scissor and we cut the bird in two. And the thing that happens when you do that, there is in placenta, there is one third of the blood that actually needs, that's the baby's blood. It's been circulating between the two. And that blood needs to migrate into the baby. Now, all right, they have already the idea in some hospitals. Let's wait till there is no more blood flow going through the umbilical cord. But that's not enough. Still, there is this aggression that they have to cut that cord. Now, that cord is filled, it is chock full of stem cells, not just any type of stem cells, no, no, the omnipotent ones, the ones that can do anything you want, the stem cells that can create any cell in the body. And that umbilical cord is full of those. And it takes 4 to 7 days for those stem cells to migrate into the baby, because that's what they will do. The umbilical cord will empty itself out fully, but on top of that, that whole placenta, yeah, it is filled with immune knowledge. It has been communicating via the placenta barrier with mom, with the womb, with the immune system of mom. So that whole placenta has a treasure of knowledge, of neurotransmitters, of hormones, you name it. It is just filled with stuff that basically needs to migrate, literally migrate into the baby's body. And what happens after that? Well, the umbilical cord disconnects by itself without any blood, without anything, it just disconnects. So, wow, that's something. And the whole of
It
humanity.
is something.
Yes, yes, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Robin, so I first heard this concept in 2014 from Robin Lim, in a midwife in Bali. And I went to visit her birthing center, and I had no idea that in some traditional cultures, the woman would wrap the placenta still attached to the baby for those first few days after the birth, until, like you said, it just, when the everything was done, it would just shrivel up and detach itself, and no cutting was required. And I found that fascinating, that you would literally be carrying your newborn and the placenta around with you those first few days. But so I have heard that before, and certainly placenta encapsulation is another option for people. But it's just really amazing that the placenta is genetically identical to the baby. It's the baby's twin, essentially, and
It is
yeah, it's nourished and grew that
yeah,
baby.
yeah, it is the baby. And of course, you named Robin Lynn. That's also where I got the mustard. uh, since I connected with her, and I don't remember when that was, somewhere in 2000, I don't know, but the way I connected with her was via a baby that was born that way. We had a meeting, and one of my students, I think that was 2007, one of my students came with the baby, and she said she had her niece in town. She said, "This baby is so amazing. Can it come to the meeting?" And all right, so mom and that newborn came to the meeting. The kid was 5 months old, or maybe between 4 and 5. And we talked in the meeting 5 6 hours, a long meeting. The kid never give one didn't make any sound at all. It wasn't clamoring for its mother. It wasn't making faces. It was just that perfect little thing that was sitting there observing it all. No need. Mom got up, gave him breastfeeding, and that's it. He didn't even have to ask for it. There was such a bond between the two. And, I started talking to mom, hey, what happened? What is this? Well, then she told me about Robin Lynn and about that whole lotus bird. And I've been, so fascinated because the reality of it is most people, and I think 99.9%, feel deep inside that we have something missing. There is something, and we cannot put our finger on it, but there is something that we are not complete. And with these babies, yeah, there is nothing missing at all. Since that kid, I think maybe 10, 12 of my students also had lotus babies that were born without any intervention. And they are so immensely satisfied, immensely happy, so full, complete babies. It is beyond belief. And to me, that is also, if you look at the world, if a person is born in such satisfaction, there is no need for greed. There is no need for two houses and three cars and you name it. There is an inner satisfaction there.
I wanted to hear you speak more about the connection between the mouth, a free voice, and birth.
The mouth and bird. All right. Well,
Yes, and the a free voice.
yes, 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 yes. I got your point. That is one of the things that also living here and talking to midwives and having student midwives that work with the native population here, Navajos and stuff like that, and their medical world is very primitive. They have no access to huge hospitals, luckily for them, but that's another thing. But they, especially birthing is totally different for them. And that was also with that first lotus baby. I talked to mom about how was the birth, and she started telling me her profession, as she's a professional laugher. What that means is she goes and gives laughing meditations. That's her profession. So she travels around, the West here in the US, and wherever she goes, she has appointments. She goes and sits in front of an audience, and then, it's 2 hours of laughing. And, that was so amazing. She said, during birth, whenever there was a pain coming, whenever there were these contractions coming, instead of going into the pain, she went into laughter. She went into just laughing, and the laughter goes through your whole body. And she said the moment that she felt back to pain, something closed up in her. But the moment that she remembered to laugh again, yeah, that getting also out of the mind with laughter connected her to more. She was telling me as if the contractions were not hers anymore. They became cosmic contractions, as if she was connected to a higher force where that energy kept coming down from. And the baby was born laughing. I mean, mom was laughing. Now, connecting to the Navajo people here, the nurse or the midwife in Tuba City in Navajo country, she told me that they have a competition in birth. Who laughs the loudest? And yes, that's what they do to open up their vaginal world down there is by opening up the mouth with jokes, with laughter, and it's a scientific fact, a physical fact. If there is in a body an opening and a tunnel through it. If the top is closed, the bottom is closed. If the bottom is open, the top will be open. If the top is open, the bottom will be open. And that leads us in my cranial work in my school here. Um, we have quite a lot of techniques for moms, but also for students. It's not just for moms to open up the whole mouth and well, that is not just opening that avenue, but what comes with it is that the woman gets her voice back, gets her power back. Yeah, and that is, women around the world should open that mouth of them, not just for gossip, but to say their truth. That, yeah, totally. That is such a pity that it's all men that have. Well, I'm talking, but all right. Uh, it's all men that have the power, and that is so unjust. So unjust.
I learned from Ina May Gaskin, the famous midwife, about when women are in labor, having an open mouth will help to open and dilate the cervix. So I have heard that, but I've never heard of laughing during labor. I love that.
Well, that's the most easy thing to do, and the most easy thing also to understand. And also birthing can be fun. If you're gonna
It's
write
a
a
lot of
book,
work, but
Laura, if you're gonna write a book, Laura, that will be your title. Birthing can be fun, and a lot of fun.
I did go to Bali and wrote a book while I was visiting Robin Lim on birth, and now I just need to publish it. And actually, I needed a title, so that's thank you for that tidbit.
All right. There was another thing I wanted to talk about, about how misguided the birthing process in hospitals is. When a baby, that's one of the other things, a baby coming out of a womb. Oh, yeah. Who was, well, you know this already. I think that's also in Robin Lynn's book, that chimpanzees also have lotus birds. They, when a baby is born, all the other chimpanzees are watching the whole happening, and they will not come and touch the newborn unless the umbilical cord disengages by itself. They stay around watching it and have that much grace not to interfere at all, not to interfere at all, and just wait, wait, wait. And when the baby is really born, which means the umbilical cord has disengaged by itself without any aggression. Yeah, and this already gives you another idea. How do we want our children to be? How do we want their first insight in life to be? Something about aggression or totally non aggressive, totally according to nature? Let it happen by itself. Now, about this, there are different aspects in a baby and a mom's body. And you probably know all this stuff, uh, about bonding, about oxytocin, about how the brain is going to be certain aspects, how they can be turned on or not. And one of the things that babies, well, let me, before I go, that there's another thing that uh, comes to mind first. Babies have a specific, a very specific moment that they want, that they absolutely need to be born. It's a very specific moment in time. And at that moment, when they are born, there is a certain alignment, a cosmic alignment of planets. This is astrology, but it goes with one with one specific moment, and that's the baby's moment. And on that moment, the what we call the long tide, that very subtle rhythm that we also know as the breath of life. Yeah, that energy is not just coming from the sun, it is also reflected by all different planets where they are, and that will give the baby his own inner genius, its own inner reality. Yeah. And that makes us all different. That makes us all unique. And all of us, every baby, we all of us have our very specific genius. What it is, we're not all Einsteins, of course not. That would be boring. But we all, some are going to be fantastic bakers, But what's better than a fantastic bread to eat? We all have our specific thing. And then, what you see happening, and it's close to 50% at this point in the US, that babies are not allowed to come in the world when they decide, but to come in the world when the hospital decides, when the gynecologist decides. They're just being cut out. And there is different reasons for that. One of them is, yeah, they're less likely to be sued. That's one of the American fantastic things. Less likely to be sued, but also much easier to plan. You can plan one at that hour, one at that hour. But in the meantime, 50% of our newborns in the US are not born really biologically. They are not born, they are just put on the world on not their own time, but at somebody else's timing. This to me is a crime against every person that has to do that. And of course, as a mom, if you don't have a voice, you're not going to dare to say anything, because, hey, it's a hospital. And in a hospital, birthing is basically foremost a medical problem. That's what it is. But all right, that's one thing. Now, once a baby is born, yeah, there has to be a hormonal, a chemical bond that needs to be, it is there already, but it needs to be enforced for the baby's brains to get activated. The mammalian brain, which sits between the sympathetic and the human brain, is a brain that needs oxytocin. It needs love. Otherwise, it's not going to be turned on 100%. And that's where all these babies that you were talking about in the beginning, they're uneasy, they cry, they're fidgety, they are really annoying to be with. And that's all because of, yeah, the very beginning, when that bond with mom needs to be made. And how is it made? By leaving the baby immediately with the umbilical cord intact. The baby needs to go on mom's heart. That's point one. It needs to smell mom. It needs to hear mom's heartbeat. It needs to feel mom. It needs to hear mom, not words. A baby doesn't understand words, but the vibration of love that comes from mom's voice. Whatever she says, at that moment she's soaked with love hormone, with oxytocin. She is just pure love. And the sounds that she makes, the vibrations that the sound gives, are just without any dissonance. And there is a part in the brain, the anterior cingulate gyrus, that responds to that sound, and it gets activated by the sound of love. And that is maximal Yeah, the first week, the first 2 weeks, but especially at the very, 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 very beginning when the baby just comes out. So if a baby at that moment hears the nurses talking about, oh, it's this long and it weighs this much and it's being carried around by a person. And don't get me wrong, nurses, of course, love babies and do their best, but they don't have the same love vibration as mom. And that is where the disconnect happens at that very moment. Yeah, the first hours, the first days, when a baby only has to be on mom, carried by mom, hearing mom, feeling mom, smelling mom. That's where that connection happens. And the babies that don't get that, well, yeah, we can bring that back, but it will take time, it will take effort to bring back something that should be there in the very beginning. And on top of that, if that's happening in the very beginning, there is going to be so much frustration from the baby, but also from mom. What's she going to do? Yeah. So there is going to be so much frustration instead of a lovely connection that's going to be there. Well, wow, what a thing. What a thing. But that's birthing at this moment. So we, as you and I, as craniotherapists, we know how our work, can bring that all back. But it shouldn't be necessary, really. We're going after something that actually can be avoided so easily. But go change all these hospitals and all those MD schools.
Eh,
Yes.
I mean, I had a home birth 3 years ago, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. And I wish more women could experience the power of birthing at home, because there's nothing like it. You can't replicate that in a hospital setting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad, that you come from that space. You know the difference, you felt the difference, and I'm so glad that that's what women need. Women with experience, that have had a home birth, that understand also the hormonal implications, and that's the sad truth. You have a choice there. Either the baby comes from love, and that brings them, their hormonal state is going to be geared to love, to being full. That's basically what it means to being totally without any needs, without anything that's missing. Or they come from that frustration from their sympathetic brain, which is a fight flight brain. And the babies that are there, oh man, the noise that they make, that sympathetic sound, the crybabies. It is so unnecessary. But they're crying for something. They're shouting for something. That and a lot of mothers with a baby like that, they have no clue because nobody tells them. That's the point. Nobody tells them. Every gynecologist and hospital setting, they're so stuck, literally stuck in their ways. And it's such a, well, we have work to do, Laura.
Yeah. And I think I also really appreciate what you were saying as a practitioner of how you do your work from a place of intuition, which requires a lot of confidence in practice, I think. But that's the best way to assist someone else, right? To help someone else heal, is instead of using your brain, but you're just using your channeling a direct connection.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing, and that's, of course, if you have a few years practice, that will automatically grow that intuition. Because if you keep on working with the techniques you learned, that You notice it doesn't work in the beginning. You're looking, but basically, if you touch the body, you touch is going to tell you what to do, what is needed. It's a very simple phenomenon, and it takes some confidence. I have quite a lot of gray hair. I don't have any black hair anymore. It takes a lot of confidence, and also yeah, practice, years of practice to get to that very simple space of intuition. Yeah. But the baby, it's also total intuition there. A baby is born. Who guides the baby to make a bone, then a muscle, then this, then that? It's pure no mind stuff. There is no brain that is guiding that baby. It's totally comes out of nature, out of no mind.
Mm-hmm. And I know for me, when I do cranial work on an infant, especially a newborn, um, it's I literally feel like I'm directly connected to God. I can't even describe the power that comes with putting your hands on a newborn and it really almost getting out of the way, right? Because
Right.
they're
Well,
just so
say
much
it
intelligence
very
there.
easily, but you are connected to God at that point. What else? What else? You know that newborn is just another incarnation of God. You are connected to these forces, and that's what makes us work so joyful actually, right?
Wow. Well, Etienne, do you have any last thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I have a no, not really, but with cranio, we can, and the most important thing is usually we always think, oh, the baby needs help. Sure, the baby needs help, but that's simple. The one that needs the most help is mom. Mom just created the baby all on her own, all on her own. She provided all the nutrients that baby needs. And after birth, she is in this hormonal heaven from all the hormones of the birthing, and she'll give her soul away for that baby. She'll do anything for that baby. And then after a few months, she starts realizing that's all right, the honeymoon is gone, everything, life keeps going. And then she starts realizing how exhausted she is. Yeah, and I think we underestimate that, especially newborn or a woman disappears and a mother is born. That's also something that we don't look at. But you stop being a woman, you become a mother, and that's a whole different species. And mothers need all the support we can get. You don't want a mom that's exhausted. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we as craniosacral practitioners also shouldn't be forgetting, to almost, I would say, almost force moms, yeah, to be on the table regularly. And they'll notice that's also something that you probably noticed with a lot of these babies. If you treat mom, boom, the baby suddenly changes into something totally different. They become easy. They feel that mom is easing down, is not so stressed, and they have only one example, these babies, and that's mom. Well, dad, hopefully also, but they're gonna follow mom's moods to a T almost. So moms go
Mm-hmm. That is
training.
so true. I've seen that a lot in my office. The dyad, babies might come in as a referral from a lactation consultant or pediatrician, but if mom's not under care as well, then the uh, the treatment is not as effective.
Of
Both
course.
people need to be under care.
All right.
Yeah, so cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your wisdom and your decades of expertise.
All right. Look for the book, Laura.
Wow, what an episode. Wasn't that fascinating to learn about the power of body work and meditation and lotus birth? We just covered so many cool topics today. So if you wanted to learn more about Etienne and his school, he is offering the first annual online global craniosacral summit, and it's virtual November 21st, 22nd, 2020. You can get more information at his website at PeirsmanCranioSacral.com. And also, if you're interested in becoming a part of my new online community supporting perinatal women, I am looking for women preconception that want to be part of my first module. So please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Brayton Birth Method to sign up and get more information. We'll be launching very soon.